The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Leng. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are taking a look at the new parallel investigator. That's right, we are taking a look at none other than Skids O'Toole, the new parallel investigator who was released this week by Fantasy Flight Games. As you may remember, we had Daisy Walker released in, I believe it was April or May. And so now we have our second parallel investigator. This is my second attempt to record this. I attempted to stream this yesterday. Unfortunately, I had a catastrophic internet failure and the stream was cut short. So I decided that I would just play it safe and record this episode so that you can hear my thoughts about the Skids O'Toole Parallel Investigator. We're going to take a look at the new investigator as well as his new side scenario that was released, All or Nothing. It is based on the House Always Wins from the Dunwich Legacy, and the goal in that one is to simply enter the Clover Club and make off with as many resources as possible, which is right up the new Skids O'Toole Investigator's alley. There are going to be spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you like what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before I get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. Special thanks to the 3 latest patrons who embraced the darkness: Hans Johansson, Baron Joey, and Scott Armstrong. Thank you very much. Your support is greatly appreciated. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these parallel investigator reviews, as well as my reviews of the player cards and playthroughs. If you'd like to become a patron to support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. Skids has not had the greatest reputation in the Arkham Horror LCG. He's always been sort of the, redheaded stepchild of all the investigators from the core set. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. Now, I'm not going to say he's a bad investigator. I think there are investigators that I don't like, that I don't particularly enjoy playing in this game. But I think that if you put some work into it, you can build a deck that you can build for an investigator, and most investigators can succeed with the right deck. I think if I had to choose one word to describe Skids, it would be awkward, and he's always been sort of awkward since the days of the core set. The first reason that Skids has a bad rap in the community, I think, is his 2 willpower, which means he is vulnerable to a lot of common treacheries, including Rotting Remains, which will cost him sanity, and Frozen in Fear, which, if it pops at the wrong time, can lock him down and really prevent him from playing the game. Now, there is some players who feel that Skids has the skills and abilities to simply ignore Frozen in Fear, and that may be true in certain games, but I think letting a Frozen in Fear ride in your threat area can be particularly painful in some cases. And there are certain campaigns, such as the Circle Undone, where willpower treacheries are a dime a dozen, and an investigator like Skids can really struggle. Now, low willpower is not a Skids only problem, as we have seen. It is a problem that many rogue investigators suffer from. It is their Achilles heel, but I think Skids gets a bad rap because he was the first to have the lowest willpower, and he really suffered from that. I think one of the other issues that Skids has to deal with is that he is an off-class Guardian. He can take Guardian cards at level 0 to 2, but he has a base combat skill value of only 3, which makes it challenging for him to defeat enemies efficiently. I think a lot of players go in expecting Skids to play a combat role or a support combat role in scenarios, and he is not very well equipped to do that. He does have cards like physical training in the Guardian card pool that he can pump resources into to improve his combat skill. But unfortunately, when you are starting with a 3, you are a little behind the curve compared to other investigators that pack a 4 or a 5. And so it makes it that much more difficult for Skids to catch up with those investigators that are better equipped to defeat enemies. Now, he can use cards like physical training to pump his combat skill. Unfortunately, he also needs those resources to trigger his special ability to gain that additional action. So you can run into situations where he simply doesn't have the resources to do all the things that he needs to do. It doesn't help Skids that his best ability is his agility, which is a 4, but so he's sort of a combat investigator who wants to evade things, and that sort of archetype is not particularly well supported, and it was certainly not supported in the core set. So he is really quite awkward in that respect. Now, there is also a belief among members of the community that Skids is a poor choice as a investigator in multiplayer. He has his ability set. He's not particularly good at investigating. He's not particularly good at fighting. He's okay at evading things. So he sort of is a square peg trying to fit in a round hole in the multiplayer format. Now, some people believe that he is much better off if you play him solo or in the 1 or 2 player format. I have, since I tend to play solo, I have had some success with him in that format, but I know that I played Skids in combination with Jenny Barnes in one of the first campaigns that I recorded on this channel, and he did not fare particularly well in that. So Skids is also fighting this perception that he is not a good multiplayer investigator. It doesn't help Skids that his signature event on the Lam is particularly weak. A lot of investigators have much better skills or events than on the Lam. If you compare on the Lam, say, to something like Safina's Painted World, it really starts to look quite poor. Some players have compared it to basically a dodge, which is, dodge is a card in the Guardian card pool, but I don't think it's a signature card by any stretch of the imagination. So on the Lam, his Skids' signature card is deemed to be too weak by many players, and so he that also takes a bit of a shine off him. Fortunately, his signature weakness, Hospital Debts, is also considered to be quite tame by signature weakness standards. It's certainly not as bad as something like Cover Up from Roland Banks. However, it does cost Skids experience points if he fails to deal with it, which in some classes wouldn't be a big deal, but I think in the Rogue class it has a much bigger effect than some people give it credit for, because Rogues have a lot of cards that cost a lot of experience points. I'm thinking of things like Ace in the Hole and Gold Pocket Watch. And so losing those 2 experience points, especially if you're losing them consistently over the course of a scenario, could really punish Skids, because he doesn't have he won't have the experience necessary to purchase those cards. So Hospital Debts is relatively easy to deal with. You just need to transfer resources to it. So as long as Skids can get the resources, he can deal with it. But losing that 2 experience points, those experience points are going to add up over the course of a scenario if you don't deal with it. One of the other issues that Skids experienced, especially back in the core set days, was this perception that while he generates extra actions, he didn't really have the tools to leverage those actions. I'm thinking in particular here of his intellect is only 3, so he's not particularly good at investigating. So while it's great that he can get 4 actions in order to investigate each turn, you're making those investigate checks at very poor odds. So you're simply spending more time. You're making a lot of checks at bad odds, which is not really a position you want to be in. The same is true of his combat. Again, with a combat skill value of 3, he is going to have trouble defeating enemies, especially tougher enemies that have 4 or 5 fight values. And so while you have the potential to be taking 4 actions around, you're taking those actions at not particularly good odds. So Skids has that extra action, but being able to leverage it effectively can be somewhat of an issue. Finally, I think as the game has grown, Skids has simply been outclassed by a lot of the other rogue investigators in the card pool. He has that extra action that he can generate, but if you want to play the big money game with Skids, you might as well play an investigator like Jenny Barnes or Preston Fairmont, who have a much easier time of generating mounds and mounds of resources during a scenario. If you want to try to leverage events like backstab and sneak attack, you've got an investigator like Safina Rousseau, who events are right up her alley, and so Skids isn't particularly good with those. If you want to, and more recently, if you want to play a combat Skids and try to work to use his combat and the Guardian card pool, Tony Morgan was released in the Dream Eaters, so now you have a rogue with a combat skill value of 5, which is fantastic, which sort of makes you wonder, like, why would I bother playing Skids when I can simply play Tony instead and still access most of the cards that I need, that you would need in the Guardian card pool. And you've also got the flexibility of going Seeker or Survivor, depending on the campaign that you're playing in. So Skids is sort of, like I said, he's awkward. He doesn't really do anything particularly well. That extra action he gets is fantastic, but when you compare him to other investigators that have become available since his release, he starts to look a little bit weak. Especially, again, if you want to play an investigator who is good at investigating and evading, you can simply play Finn Edwards. And I think the other issue is that while many of these rogue investigators have low willpower, many of them, I think, are better equipped to deal with that low willpower than Skids. An investigator like Finn Edwards, for example, he has access to the Survivor and Seeker card pool, so he can play things like Logical Reasoning for the 2 willpower icons, as well as the ability to remove cards with the Terror trait and Heal Horror. So I think while that low willpower is a common trait, I think that other investigators are better equipped to deal with it, and poor Skids is not. So while I think he is awkward, I do think you can build. I have had some success with him in playing solo, and I certainly think you can build a strong Skids deck that can perform well. It's just that he compared to other investigators these days, I think some of the shine has come off him. Now, the parallel investigator rules were released back with Daisy Walker, but it's worth taking a moment to take a look at them and refresh our memories about what they do. So when you are building a Skids O'Toole deck going forward, you can choose whether to use the original version or the parallel version of both of his front and back sides. Each version has its own advantages and disadvantages. You can also mix and match the 2 versions, which means you can use both the original side, both parallel sides, or the front side of one and the parallel back of the other, which gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of building a Skids O'Toole deck going forward. If you really like that ability to have that additional action, you can take that, and then you can take his new deck building restrictions if that's something you want to explore. Or you can take, if you like the Guardian card pool and there's cards in there that you want, you can keep the original Skids' backside while running his new front side. So there's a lot of ways you can mix and match the investigator's abilities with this parallel investigator rule. Now, when we take a look at the original and parallel Skids O'Toole, the original Skids O'Toole is, of course, the ex-con. He has 2 willpower, 3 intellect, 3 combat, and 4 evade, or 4 agility, sorry. He has the criminal trait and the free triggered ability. During your turn, spend 2 resources. You may take an additional action this turn, limit once per turn. And he has the Elder Sign effect, +2. And if you succeed, gain 2 resources. He has 8 health and 6 sanity. The front side of parallel Skids, he has the same stat line, so no improvements there. He has the criminal trait again, but his special ability and Elder Sign effect have both changed. His special ability is a free triggered ability. You may spend up to 3 resources, test a base skill value of 3 against a difficulty equal to the amount of resources just spent. If you succeed, gain twice the number of spent resources. Only agility and wild skill icons may be committed to this test, limit once per round. And his Elder Sign effect is +1. Choose a level 2 or less card in your discard pile. Add the chosen card to your hand. Now, there's a couple of things worth mentioning about these new abilities. Obviously, the old Skids was more leveraging that additional action. The Rogue card pool contains several cards that grant additional actions, going all the way back to the core set with Leo DeLuca. And then later in the Dunwich Legacy, we get cards like Quick Thinking and Ace in the Hole. And more recently, we have cards like Swift Reflexes that all grant additional actions. The new parallel Skids, he leans more heavily into the resource generation, and his ability is quite similar to something like Jenny Barnes. Jenny Barnes gets that additional resource during the upkeep phase. Skids' new ability is a lot similar to, very similar to Watch This, the rogue skill that was released, I believe, in the Pallid Mask or a Phantom of Truth. I can't remember which scenario pack, but it did come out during the Path to Carcosa cycle. So Watch This lets you spend up to 3 resources, and then you get to test, and if you succeed by at least 1, you get to double the number of resources. This is quite similar to that, except that you must test a base skill value of 3, and you can only commit agility and wild skill icons to the test. So with a card like Watch This, you could always say if you ran into a swarm of rats, you could dump 3 resources into Watch This. Defeating a swarm of rats is quite easy. You would be able to, and then you'd be able to reap the reward of 6 resources. The same is true if you were investigating at a very low shroud location, especially if you had your lockpicks down on the table. You could easily use the lockpicks, play a Watch This, and then dump a bunch of resources into it and easily reap the rewards. This is going to be a little bit more difficult because you have to test a base skill value of 3 against a difficulty of 1, 2, or 3, depending on how many resources you commit. So on any given turn, if you play conservatively, you should be able to generate 2 resources per turn with Skids' new ability simply by spending 1 resource. You will be testing 3 versus 1, and on standard difficulty, usually if you're 2 up on the Chaos Bag before you pull from it, you are in generally pretty good shape. So if you commit, if you are at 3 versus 1, generally you should be able to succeed and gain those 2 resources. If you want to be much more aggressive, you can attempt to go for the gusto and generate 6 resources, but you will need to commit some cards to that skill test. So you will need some agility and wild skill icons to it. Now, if you really want to be aggressive, You can play the popular rogue skill double or nothing on this skill test. It does have a wild skill icon, so Skids could test 3v6. You'd obviously need to commit a lot of several skill icons to this test, but if you succeed, you would generate 12 resources, which is fantastic. Now, the Skids will need to commit agility and wild skill icons to this test if he wants to, which means to me that this sort of Skids is a much more evasion-oriented investigator than his original counterpart. We also see this in his deck building instructions. His deck building options also lend themselves more to an evasion-based investigator, which is, I think, where Skids probably should have been in the first place, but did not. So he should be able to leverage that for agility much easier if you are including more agility and wild skill icons in your deck. Skids' Elder Sign effect is also interesting. It is a +1 and choose a level 2 or less card in your discard pile. Add it to your hand. This ability appears on a lot of upcoming upgrades in the rogue class. In the Winifred Habermock starter deck, many of the classic rogue cards, such as Backstab, as well as some of the new cards that are being released in the starter deck, have an ability that allows you to return them to your hand at the end of the round if you succeeded. So this is very similar to that ability. So you will be able to play, say, Backstab. You can either take Backstab and play that, or you can play Backstab 2 and then return that to your hand so you can get to reuse it. So you can play Backstab 3 or 4 times per game if you're lucky. So I think this version of Skids definitely moves in the direction of really moves much more closely to where the direction of the rogue card pool was moving, both in terms of resource generation as well as the abilities on the cards. So now Skids can play cards. He can either return them to his hand. And the nice thing is that a lot of the cards in the Winifred Habermock starter deck are events, level 2 versions of events that you can return back to your hand. It's worth noting here that you can choose any level 2 card in your discard pile. That means you can choose a rogue card, or one of the new Skids leans more into the survivor class, so you can return survivor cards to your hand, which gives him a great deal of flexibility in terms of reusing cards in his discard pile. So I think that's a pretty cool ability for him to have in conjunction with some of the new events in the Winifred Habermock starter deck. The original Skids, of course, he was his deck size was 30 cards, and his deck building options were rogue cards level 0 to 5, guardian cards level 0 to 2, and neutral cards level 0 to 5. And his deck building requirements, of course, were on the lam, hospital debts, and 1 random basic weakness. The new Parallel Skids breaks all sorts of I guess it explores all sorts of new design space. The first thing we notice immediately is that his deck size is 25. Now, this has several effects at the beginning of a campaign. You are going to, because you have a smaller deck size, your deck is going to be more consistent. You're going to be able to draw the cards that you need that much faster. You are also going to probably see your weaknesses a little bit more often. So that smaller deck size will have an impact at the beginning of a campaign. Now, there is a reason that he does have this lower deck size that we will see in a moment. His deck building options are rogue cards level 0 to 5, fortune cards level 0 to 3, and gambit cards level 0 to 3, and neutral cards level 0 to 5. This is a pretty dramatic shift. Gone are all of those Guardian cards that you were used to playing in the original Skids. Now you can choose Fortune and Gambit cards. Most of these, as we will see, come from the Survivor card pool. So Skids is replacing his Guardian aspect with a Survivor option, which leads to all sorts of new deck building options for Skids. We'll take a closer look at some of those cards in a minute. But what I would also like, his deck building requirements are the same. His signature event and signature weakness both get upgrades that we will look at later. But it is the additional deck building options where Skids gets really exciting. When you upgrade a Fortune or Gambit card, you may instead pay the full experience cost of the higher level version and leave the lower level version in your deck. It does not count towards your deck size or the number of copies of that card in your deck. So what this means is that Skids, the parallel Skids anyway, is the first investigator who can include multiple copies of cards with the same name. So, for example, he can include Hot Streak 2 from Return to the Night of the Zealot, as well as Hot Streak 4 from the core set. So you can play 4 copies of Hot Streak in your deck. So you would purchase the level 2 version, and then you could upgrade it to the level 4 version, and you would just pay the 4 resources per copy for Hot Streak 4. And then you would leave the Hot Streak 2 in your deck. And it would not count against your deck size, but your deck size keeps going up. So if you were to do that after a couple of scenarios, your deck size would still be 25, but you would have 27 cards in your deck. Another card that Skids can upgrade this way is Lucky. From the core set, you have Lucky 0 as well as Lucky, I believe it's level 2. So you can have 4 copies of Lucky. Now, the exciting thing here is that Lucky 3 will be released in the Stella Clark starter deck later this month. So theoretically, you can have 6 copies of Lucky in your deck, 4 of which won't count against your deck size. So while you would have, if you went the Lucky route, you would have, say, 29 cards in your deck, but only your deck size would remain at 25, but you would have 29 cards in your deck. So you can see why the designers lowered his actual deck size a little bit by 5 cards, but then made those cards not count against his deck. So his deck size is actually closer to 30 plus once you start upgrading some of those Fortune and Gambit cards. So this is unprecedented. We haven't seen an investigator who can do anything like this, and I think that's going to be very attractive to a lot of players who have been champing at the bit to be able to play cards like Hot Streak and Lucky in multiples. Let's take a look at some of the cards in that the parallel Skids has access to now. There are not that many with the Gambit trait. Most cards with the Gambit trait are rogue cards to begin with, so he doesn't gain any additions there. The ones that are added to the card pool, there are 2 Survivor cards and 1 Seeker card. The big Survivor card, I think, with the Gambit trait is Active Desperation, which, of course, you can play in combination with the 45 Thompson from the Secret Name, or you could play it in combination with the upgrade For the Greater Good. So you can generate a bunch of resources that way and recycle the weapon. So that is an exciting addition for Skids there. Belly of the Beast is not a card that I have played, but it does give you a way to discover clues if you evade an enemy, which is going to be right up the new Skids. He's going to be doing a lot more evading, I think, than fighting. So Belly of the Beast is an interesting option there to discover some clues. The other Survivor card is Last Chance. That's a fantastic skill from the Forgotten Age. It starts off with 5 wild skill icons, and then it loses an icon for each card in your hand. This card sees a lot of play in many different Survivor decks, with good reason. Generally, it can be as good as an Unexpected Courage and possibly better in a lot of situations, which certainly helps when you have a willpower skill value of 2. Last Chance can save you against those treacheries, especially against ones like Rotting Remains and Frozen in Fear that you are testing against. Or if you're going through the Circle Undone campaign and you need to get rid of some of those willpower treacheries that are lingering in your threat area, something like Last Chance can be a huge benefit there. Finally, there is one other card that is not a rogue card. That is Practice Makes Perfect from Dark Side of the Moon. Practice Makes Perfect lets you search your deck for skills with the practice trait. There are several in the rogue card pool, notably Daredevil. There is Daredevil 2 and Daredevil level 0 will be released in the Winifred Habermock starter deck, so that is an option there, as well as cards like Momentum 1 and 3 Aces, which I believe is also in Dark Side of the Moon. So if you'd like to explore that 3 Aces build, Practice Makes Perfect. You could have 2 copies of 3 Aces in your hand, play Practice Makes Perfect, potentially find the 3rd copy lurking in your deck, commit it, and the other 2 copies of 3 Aces in your hand in order to automatically succeed at a skill test, gain a bunch of resources, and draw some cards to boot. So there are a few options in the Gambit card pool. Not that many, but they do open up some very interesting deck building options, especially cards like Act of Desperation in combination with some of the big guns that are in the rogue card pool. I'm thinking specifically of the 45 Thompson as well as the Chicago Typewriter. There are a lot more fortune cards. Actually, before I go on, the only card with the Gambit trait that you can really use that additional deck building options with is Daring Maneuver. Daring Maneuver from the Path to Carcosa. The original Daring Maneuver 0 was released in Path to Carcosa. And it boosts the Succeed by 2 archetype, the overachieving rogue archetype. It's fast, and you can play it when you succeed at a skill test. You get +2 skill value for this test. If you want to play with 4 copies of Daring Maneuver, you can upgrade Daring Maneuver 0 to Daring Maneuver 2, which will come out in the Winifred Habermock starter deck. And Daring Maneuver 2 is basically the same, except you get +3 skill value for this test and you draw a card. So if you are interested in that overachiever deck type and succeeding by 2 to trigger cards such as Lucky Cigarette Case and whatnot, then 4 copies of Daring Maneuver are now a possibility with the backside of Parallel Skids. Now, as I mentioned briefly, the Fortune trait appears on a lot of different cards. Most of them are Survivor cards. There is one Seeker card down at the bottom there, Surprising Find 1 from Where the Gods Dwell, but for the most part, they are Survivor cards. So we are seeing Skids shift from the Guardian to a more Survivor-based Investigator, which I think is interesting. It's also worth noting that while Skids may use a lot of Survivor cards with the Fortune trait, he's not going to have access to a lot of the Survivor weapons. So he won't be able to use the new guns that will appear in the Stella Clark starter deck. There'll be no chainsaw for him, no meat cleavers, fire axes and stuff like that. All that stuff is off limits for Skids, but he can use a lot of the very powerful skills and events, such as Look What I Found to help him discover additional clues. You've got a Chance Encounter, which you can play in conjunction with allies in order to pull them from the discard pile. It's worth noting that a Chance Encounter also comes in level 0 and level 2 versions, so if you really want to have some play around with some ally shenanigans, you could have 4 copies of a Chance Encounter in your deck. Maybe play it in conjunction with the Red Gloved Man from, I believe it's Lost in Time and Space, I believe is where he came out in. A Glimmer of Hope is a great Survivor skill event that was released in Point of No Return. Again, you can spend some resources to pull all 3 versions of those back to your hand. So that gives that's a nice source of wild icons that Skids can use repeatedly to either pass that skill test on his free triggered ability, or use it to defeat enemies or willpower skill tests. We've got Daredevil 2, level 2 and level 0, which is coming out in the Winifred Habamok starter deck. We've got some cards like Dumb Luck. Dumb Luck was released in the Forgotten Age, and it is an evasion-based card, and it also has a level 2 version coming out in the Stella Clark starter deck. So if you want to play 4 versions of that, you're good to go. We've got Eucatastrophe from Before the Black Throne, Hot Streak 2, of course, and Hot Streak 4, which I talked about. All 3 versions of Lucky. We've got Oops, which I don't know. I've never played Oops with any. I don't think I've ever played it, but if you would like to play 4 copies of Oops, that is now an option. You can play the original that appeared in the Miskatonic Museum, as well as the level 2 version that appeared in the Return to the Dunwich Legacy expansion. We've also got Scrounge for Supplies, another fantastic Survivor card that can fetch cards from the discard pile. So between Skids' ability, you've got Skids' ability, you've got to return cards from the discard pile. You've got cards like Scrounge for Supplies that can return cards from the discard pile. And then a lot of the new rogue events that will be coming out in the Winifred Habamok starter deck that can be returned from your discard pile. Skids is getting a nice little recursion theme going there that will be interesting to explore. And he's also got Stroke of Luck, which I have played and has been quite helpful in some games. So between cards like Stroke of Luck 2 from Where Doom Awaits and Sure Gamble 3 from the core set, you have Skids has a way of passing skill tests. And if you go the 3 aces route, you could also have a guaranteed success in there as well. So a lot of interesting cards, I think. Like between the Gambit and Fortune cards, you're adding not many in the Gambit card pool, but quite a few in Fortune, and they do lend the parallel Skids a very different deck feel that I think will be quite fascinating for players to explore going forward. There are quite a few of the Fortune cards that you can use that work well with Skids' additional deck building instructions. I mentioned a Chance Encounter earlier, so you could play 4 copies of Chance Encounter in combination with a powerful ally like the Red Gloved Man. There's Daredevil 0 and 2, which you could use to fetch. You could explore a skill-heavy, what am I thinking about here? A skill-heavy Skids build and use Daredevil to fetch those skills from your deck. Certainly, Double or Nothing is a good target if you have the ability to pass the skill test. Dumb Luck, I haven't played it yet, but there is a version, level 2 version coming out. It also has 2 agility skill icons on it, which is quite nice, and is a way to deal with non-elite enemies. Hot Streak 2 and 4, which there's a ton of resource generation in there. Look What I Found would be, I think it would have been, if this had been the original Skids build, that would have been fantastic for him. But of course, he does now have access to cards like Intel Report, to discover clues without taking skill tests. But having that little extra in Look What I Found is a nice option as well. It also has the 2 intellect skill icons, and there is Look What I Found level 2 coming out in the Stella Clark starter deck, and I believe that one is if you fail a skill test by 3 or less, so it gives you a little more flexibility on either side of the when you're failing. Lucky, of course, we've already talked about that extensively. There'll be you can have up to 6 copies of Lucky in your deck, thanks to Parallel Skids' deck building instructions. I don't know whether you need 6 copies, but Lucky is a staple card in many Survivor decks, and And I certainly wouldn't turn down the ability to play 6 of them, especially if some of them get me +3 to a skill test and draw me cards. And of course, there is Oops, which I can't even remember what it does. I should read here. Play after you fail a skill test by 2 or less when attacking an enemy, deal this damage to a different enemy. Yeah, that's... I mean, Oops was always a very narrow card to begin with, and so I don't think that's going to see a ton of play in Skids, but who knows? The Arkham Horror LCG community are a smart bunch of people, and they come up with all sorts of crazy decks that use cards that I sort of leave in the box. So I'm sure we'll see somebody come up with a deck that is able to leverage Oops. You'd probably need to play it in multiplayer though, because in solo there's probably just not enough enemies around to be able to trigger it. The Skids, the Parallel Skids announcement also released his 2 advanced signature cards. Now, the rules for signature cards are basically the same as they were for Daisy Walker. Regardless of which version of Skids O'Toole you end up using, you may also optionally upgrade Skids' signature cards to his new advanced signature cards, replacing the original versions. These are included only as a set. If you choose to upgrade on the Lamb, you must also upgrade Hospital Debts. Doing so costs no experience and may be done at any point during a campaign. However, once this upgrade is made, it cannot be undone unless you are instructed to otherwise. Now, as we saw with the Daisy Walker Parallel Investigator, her tote bag did receive a little bit of a boost, but her signature weakness, the Necronomicon, received quite a boost to make it extremely nasty. And so there was quite a bit of debate whether it was worth making whether it was worth upgrading those signature cards. It's also interesting here that I think Skids is, as we will see, I think Skids you upgrade. I think that the improvement on the Lamb and Hospital Debts. Hospital Debts isn't nearly as nasty as the Necronomicon is, so I think you would probably upgrade, but we'll look at those in a second. It's also important to note here that once the upgrade is made, it cannot be undone. Now, this is I did peek ahead at the resolutions to the all or nothing scenario, which we will look at again. Spoiler alert, we are going to look at the resolutions because I think it's important to do so, particularly for Skids. And there is, depending on whether you succeed or fail at the scenario, you do have the option to downgrade or upgrade your signature cards. So the designers are exploring some new space there as well, letting you mix and match the advanced version of the signature cards with their basic versions, depending on how you do in the side scenario, of course. So On the Lamb has never been a particularly good card. I don't think I've ever played it in any of the games I've played with Skids. I have always committed it to a skill test, which is pretty easy to do considering it has 1 intellect, 1 agility, and 2 wild skill icons. It can make the difference if you are investigating or attempting to evade. It costs 1 resource. It's fast, and you can play it after your turn begins and until the end of the round. Non-elite enemies cannot attack you. So it's your window of opportunity to play On the Lamb is very small, only when your turn begins, and then until the end of the round, non-elite enemies cannot attack you. Unfortunately, they will still chase you. So if you have, say, an enemy engaged with you and you play On the Lamb and then try to move away, that enemy is still going to follow you around unless you evade it. So it doesn't really save you a great deal there. It could potentially save you if you're at a location and need to do a bunch of investigate actions. The enemy won't be able to attack you when you do that, but it doesn't really get rid of an enemy per se. You still have to either evade it or somehow deal with it in combat. Now, On the Lamb Advanced is, I think, quite an improvement over the over its original version. It is free, so no resource cost. Same icons. It is fast, but now you can play it during any free triggered ability window. There are free triggered ability windows in the Mythos phase, the investigation phase, the enemy phase, as well as the upkeep phase. So now you can play On the Lam pretty much whenever you want. If you're playing multiplayer, you can play it on another investigator's turn if you want. There's no... Basically, if you need to play it, there'll be a window to play it. So you're not locked into playing it at the beginning of your turn when you may not know what is going to happen. So now you have a lot more flexibility. It has the same game text: until the end of the round, non-elite enemies cannot attack you. That is the same. But it has the additional game text that at the end of the round, you may disengage from each engaged enemy and move up to 2 locations away. I think this is a super addition to the card. Now you can have Skids wander the board, maybe pick up a bunch of enemies. If you're playing a scenario with a large map like Midnight Masks, Skids could pick up all of these enemies and then move to a location like your house. And then at the end of the round, you could play On the Lam would trigger. You would disengage from all those enemies, and then you could move away. So you could dump them in an out-of-the-way place where they can't affect you. This might also come in handy in a scenario like a Phantom of Truth, which has a large board. A lot of those scenarios in the Path to Carcosa have large maps where this ability could come quite handy. It would also, I think, be great in something like the Doom of Estley, where you could collect some non-elite enemies in the temple, and then you would simply, at the end of your turn, you disengage and then move two locations closer to the exit. That would be a fantastic trick to pull off. So yeah, I think it's a lot better version of On the Lam. The not attacking you is still there, but that extra ability at the end of the round to basically get a free disengage from every enemy engaged with you, and then a free move on top of that, that is pretty sweet. So a much better version of On the Lam for the advanced version anyway. Now, hospital debts is one of those weaknesses. It is not. I wouldn't consider it the worst weakness in the world. All you need to do, you have to put it into play in your threat area, and as a free triggered ability, you have to move 1 resource from your resource pool to hospital debts, limit twice per round. So being a rogue, Skids should have the resources to spare in order to clear this, and then it has the forced effect when the game ends. If hospital debts has fewer than 6 resources on it, you earn 2 fewer experience points for this scenario. So while hospital debts does not give you mental or physical trauma or otherwise hijack your game, it does cut into your experience points, which I think for rogues have several ways in order to earn bonus experience points, because they have those a lot of high cost cards like Ace in the Hole, Gold Pocket Watch. What's the other one I'm thinking of? The Doubling Effect, Borrowed Time, stuff like that. They have a lot of exceptional cards that cost a ton of experience points. So if you want to be able to afford those cards, you need the experience points in order to do it. And so losing 2 experience points, while not the worst thing to happen to you, it can impede your investigator's development over the course of a campaign, which is what I don't really like about it. Now, the upgraded hospital debts, the advanced version is a little. It requires more resources. You need to dump 9 resources on it instead of 6. So a few more resources you've got to spend. You do get to move 1 additional resource per round, so for a total of 3 to compensate for that. So it's still going to take you 3 turns to deal with hospital debts, just like the regular hospital debts. You'd need 3 turns to clear it. You're going to need 3 turns to clear the advanced hospital debts. You need more resources, but I think if you're playing the front side of Parallel Skids, you are going to be generating that many more resources. So I really don't think it's that big of a change. you're going to need more resources, but you should also be generating more resources. So clearing it should be roughly the same. So it's more, I think, more of a side grade than an upgrade for the hospital debt's weakness, which is I think one of the reasons. If I was playing the front side of Parallel Skids, I don't think I would have an issue with upgrading to the advanced on the lam and the advanced hospital debts. If I was playing the original front side of Skids, I might be a little more wary of it. You'd need to make sure that you have the resource generation in order to compensate for that additional those additional 3 resources. But between cards like we've got cards like Lone Wolf, we've got cards like Easy Mark, we've got cards like Watch This. There are so many ways to generate additional resources in the rogue card pool these days that you really shouldn't have too much trouble clearing hospital debts if you built your deck correctly. So I think in this case, while I was quite wary of upgrading Daisy's tote bag due to the nature of her weakness, I believe the upgrade, the advanced Necronomicon, triggered off tokens, which could be quite dangerous depending on the scenario. This is much more of a side grade, and so I don't think it would. You're not going to have too much trouble, I think, if you upgrade to a better on the lam and a better hospital debts. Now, the side scenario All or Nothing, as I mentioned, is based heavily on the House Always Wins. It uses the same locations as well as many of the encounter cards. The question that I think you need to ask yourself, and we're going to really get into some spoilers here, is whether it is worth Skids' time and effort to take this side scenario. Again, the side scenario rules, you can only attempt this side scenario if Skids is in the campaign. So if you're playing solo or if you're playing multiplayer, you need Skids in your group in order to attempt it. It costs Skids 3 experience points in order to attempt the scenario, and it costs every other investigator 1 experience point. So Skids is putting out 3 experience. He's laying out 3 experience points in order to participate in this side scenario. So what do you get from this side scenario is a good question. I did look at the resolutions to see what you get from achieving this. Now, as far as experience points goes in the side scenario, it looks like you have about the most you can get from the scenario itself is 5. You've got the 3 locations. There are 3 locations where you can get an experience point, victory point each, and then there are 2 enemies each worth 1 VP. So you can get 5 from the scenario. Now, depending on how many resources you stack on Act 2 of the scenario, you can earn up to 3 bonus experience points, and Skids will gain 6 additional resources at the start of a scenario. So potentially you could walk away with 8 experience points. You can net yourself 5 experience points if you complete this scenario, as well as 6 additional resources. Now, you need 60 resources per investigator in order to achieve that. Now, that I have not played the scenario yet, so I do not know how realistic that is. But I think in multiplayer, 60 resources per investigator is going to be a tall order indeed. While Skids is all in on generating resources, most other investigators are not. And so I think if you're playing Skids in a multiplayer campaign, I would probably not play the side scenario, because hitting that 60 resources per investigator is going to be challenging indeed. The bare minimum is 10 resources per investigator. So in a 4-player game, you would need 40 resources. And that, I don't know how realistic that is. That seems like an awful lot. And certainly 60 resources just seems, I don't think that is possible. And even if you just do the bare minimum, you're only getting 1 additional resource per for the next scenario. So you're spending 3 experience points. You have a chance to get 5 if you kill both enemies and clear all 3 victory point locations. And then if you just do the bare minimum, you're only getting 1 additional resource at the start of the next scenario, which I don't think it's worthwhile. If you manage to get a full get a flush or something like that, and just pull that 60 resources per investigator, 3 bonus experience points, and 6 additional resources, that's pretty good. But it is hard to say without having played the scenario whether that is possible or not. Now, the other little thing they throw in here is that if you succeed at this scenario, you may either upgrade On the Lam to its advanced version or downgrade the advanced version of Hospital Debts to its original version. Again, I don't think the signature cards are that much better or worse that I would play the scenario just for this. I mean, it would be nice to succeed and then say if you started with the advanced versions of his signature cards, and then had the opportunity to say downgrade Hospital Debts to the lower version. That's nice, but I don't think it's not going to be a huge change to how your deck functions. The same with upgrading On the Lam. Say if you just start with the basic versions of On the Lam and Hospital Debts, and you succeed at this and upgrade On the Lam, that would be obviously very nice. The advanced version of On the Lam is clearly better than the original version, but I don't think I would, I'm not so certain I would be willing to risk playing a side scenario just for that ability. Again, it really depends on how, whether it is possible to generate the vast numbers of resources that you need in order to hit those thresholds. So we are going to play a game with Skids. So we shall see whether that is possible or not. We shall find out here shortly. And if you fail the scenario, if you are unable to complete the side scenario, there is, besides any mental or physical trauma that you might take for failing it, you must either upgrade Hospital Debts to its advanced version or downgrade the advanced version of On the Lam to its original version. So again, I don't know if this isn't a huge deal to me. If I would be much more concerned about taking the mental or physical trauma, rather than saying, okay, I've got to play with a slightly worse version of Hospital Debts for the rest of the campaign. That doesn't seem all that bad, considering if you've built your Skids O'Toole deck properly, regardless of whether you're using which front or back sides you're playing with, you really should be able to clear Hospital Debts without too much trouble. So I don't think this, again, it's not devastating. It's not going to be like the campaign is over sort of thing, but it would be annoying, I think, is about all I could say about it. I wouldn't be happy about it, but again, it's not the end of the world if you happen to fail. I would be much more concerned if I went into this side scenario and then somehow ended up dying or unable to complete it and suffered a mental or physical trauma. That would be a much bigger deal, especially if it's a mental trauma, since Skids does not have, he only has 6 sanity, so he can't afford to be taking a ton of mental trauma. Of course, it also depends on the campaign as well, right? If you're playing a campaign like the Night of the Zealot that is quite quick, you may not have the experience points necessary to begin with to take on this scenario. I mean, I think you really need Hot Streak and stuff like 4 versions of Hot Streak would certainly get you a lot closer to generating 60 resources than no versions of Hot Streak. So again, with the Dream Eaters is a pretty generous campaign, so I think it might be worthwhile there. Forgotten Age, I mean, that's tough. You're taking a lot of trauma in that one. You're going to be, while it is fairly generous in terms of XP, you're going to be entering the side scenario with a lot more trauma than you might otherwise in some other campaigns. And the Circle Undone, that's already challenging for rogues, especially because of their low willpower, and it's exceedingly challenging in solo. Some of those scenarios are nigh impossible to beat. So whether you'll have that 3 experience points floating around in order to take Skids through a side scenario like this one is questionable. Let's take a look at the scenario. It only has one agenda, Agenda 1A, Eyes All Around You. The Clover Club is filled with mobsters and gamblers from all walks of life. Winning big without causing alarm may not be as easy as you thought. So if you can take an action, if you are in the Clover Club card room, spend any number of clues, you cash in your chips, gain 5 resources for each clue spent. Now there are clues at La Bella Luna as well as the locations in the back of the Clover Club. I believe there are 3 clues there, 3 or 4. So potentially you could gain 20 to 25 resources this way, depending. If you're playing solo, of course. If you're playing in multiplayer, there's going to be a lot more clues that you can generate. So there's 20 to 25 resources right there if you're able to go in and clear all those locations. And it has the force effect. If Skids O'Toole is defeated, R2, and that just means you're going to have to downgrade. Probably either upgrade to the worst hospital debts or downgrade to the worst on the lam. Now it has a doom threshold of 11. And this is the only agenda. So you've got 11 turns to complete this scenario. Of course, that depends on whether there are cards that add doom to the agenda. I think there are some in the encounter sets. So it could be challenging to. You're going to have to move quick. I think there's no time to really dawdle around, and you want to get as many resources in that in those 11 turns as you can, and then use your last action to escape La Bella Luna and resign. And of course, the back, Agenda 1B, the mob always wins. It's getting late and you've been gambling all night. Exhausted, you try to stand up but stumble and spill your drink all over the scruffy-looking fellow at your table. Slowly turning to you with a wicked scowl, the husky hoodlum stares at you with contempt. The man leaps out of his seat and lunges at you. Now you've done it. The mobsters are sure to kick you out. So unless you resign or are defeated, you suffer 1 physical trauma. So that's not. For Skids has 8 health, so that's not the worst thing in the world. But again, depending on the campaign and how much trauma you have suffered so far. And then if you succeed, you get the best. If you resign, you get the best result. Otherwise, you get the worst result. There are 2 acts, Act 1A and Act 2A. Playing cards is Act 1A. You don't want trouble, so it's best not to cause it. Try not to go all in too soon, or you'll likely take the bounce. So the investigators cannot resign, obviously. So you need to enter the Clover Club, grab as many clues as you can. The Clover Club pit boss gains aloof, like he does in the regular House Always Wins scenario, but you're still going to have him on your tail throughout the scenario. After a criminal enemy is defeated, place 1 doom on the agenda. This will speed up the game rapidly, so if you kill the pit boss or any of the mobsters, and there are a lot of mobsters in the encounter deck, you will be adding a doom to the agenda each time you kill one of them. So this really behooves you to play an evasion-oriented Skids, so you can evade all those enemies and not be adding doom to the agenda while you collect all those resources. And finally, the objective is at the end of the round, if an investigator has 15 or more resources, you can advance. So theoretically, if you get a good opening hand, you could advance this very rapidly. A hot streak or 2 would do it easily. So once you advance, once you've got the 15 resources, you can advance, and you are on to Act 2. So once you advance, feeling the heat, you spawn the set-aside Siobhan Riley enemy at La Bella Luna, and each investigator spawns 1 set-aside Clover Club bouncer enemy engaged with them. So again, You're getting 2 enemies are being added to the table. If you kill either of them, you are going to be speeding up how quickly the agenda deck advances. So again, your best option here, I think, is to evade. We'll take a look at these enemies in a moment. But once you get to Act 2A, you need to collect your winnings and escape. Each criminal enemy gains Hunter and gets +1 health. So killing them is going to be more difficult because of that +1 health. And you are going to be chased by every enemy in the place. So depending on how many enemies there are, it could be quite difficult. I think the more I think about it, if you play this in multiplayer, where you are simply going to draw a lot more encounter cards and thus a lot more enemies, this could be pretty tricky to do. Especially if they're not, if all of the investigators are not equipped to evade enemies, you're going to have to kill some of them, or you will simply be overwhelmed. So that's really going to speed up the agenda deck. So maybe this is just good if you're playing it solo. If you're playing a Skids through a solo campaign, maybe this is a lot more viable. I have a feeling that trying to get 60 resources per investigator and avoid killing any enemies to give you the time to do that is going to be that's a balancing act for sure. So the forced effect is when an investigator resigns, you place each of that investigator's resources on the act. We already looked at that. So the minimum is 10 resources per investigator, and that will get you 1 additional resource in the next scenario. So not a huge payoff. If you can get 60 resources, then you get the 3 bonus experience points and 6 additional resources on the next thing. If you're able to clear the 3 locations, you could get 3 VPs there. Killing the enemies, you get 2, but of course, once you kill those enemies, you're adding a doom. So you're sort of again, it's a balancing act. Can you afford to kill those enemies for the VPs and still have enough time to complete this scenario? 11 seems like a long time, but given the number of enemies in the encounter deck, I feel like you're really going to want to try to finish this as quickly as possible. And the objective, of course, is collect as many resources as you can and get out. And when each undefeated investigator has resigned, you can advance. So yeah, it's seems like a fairly brief scenario, only 11 turns to get this all done. You've got to balance gaining resources with dealing with the enemies, of which there are quite a few in the encounter deck. And you once you advance to Act 1B, you get 2 more enemies on the table at least. So you will have to find a way to deal with those. If you kill them, you are going to speed up the game. You are going to have less time to gain the resources that you need. So if you get a very bad draw, you could end up, say if you just do enemy, one enemy after another, you could really be in tough shape to get this done. And I'm not certain that the payoff is entirely worth it. So that is something players will have to decide for themselves, whether this scenario is worth the effort. And of course, the Act 2B is the thrill of victory, and you get the best resolution. Finally, man, I've been talking for over an hour already. That's amazing. So we have 2 enemies. We have Siobhan Riley, O'Banion Enforcer. She's got 5 fight, 6 health, 2 evade, humanoid criminal elite. After Siobhan Riley engages you, for every 5 resources you have, lose a resource. And she has the forced effect. After an investigator at Siobhan Riley's location gains 1 or more resources during the investigation phase, Siobhan Riley readies, engages that investigator, and makes an attack. Excuse me. So she hits for 1 combat and 1 health and 1 agility. Or what am I talking about? 1 health and 1 sanity. She's worth 1 VP, but man, a 5 fight, 6 health enemy is going to be tough to take down. You're going to need to put some effort into that. She is not a chump by any stretch of the imagination. She's also elite, so you can't on the lam her. So if you're going to have to evade her, fortunately her evade is only 2. So she's fairly easy to escape, certainly for Skids with a 4. Starting at a 4, you should be able to evade her, but she does prevent you from gaining resources at your location because otherwise she readies and attacks you. Finally, we have the Clover Club Bouncer. He's got one fight, 3 health, and 1 evade. Humanoid Criminal. While the Clover Club Bouncer is engaged with you, you get +1 fight and +1 evade for every 5 resources. So if you were, say, had 60 resources sitting on you, he would be a freaking monster. I'm bad at math, but that's a lot of fight and evade. Even if you have 30, he's +6 across the board. So that is not good. You can spend 3 resources to parlay with him, test 2 intellect, and if you succeed, disengage from Clover Club Bouncer and exhaust it. It does not ready during the next upkeep phase. It's got victory 0, so if you kill him, you get to add a doom to the agenda and get to put him in the victory display for nothing. And if he hits you, he'll do 2 damage. So if this guy hits the table and you had, say you advance, I think you have to advance once you have 15. So he is going to be +3. So he's going to be a 4/3/4 when you first meet him. So you're going to need to find a way to parlay with this guy and exhaust him, I think. Killing him is going to be very difficult. If you manage to somehow get a lot of resources, you're really going to have to go with the parlay action because killing him is going to be difficult to do indeed. So that is the Skids O'Toole Parallel Investigator and his side scenario, All or Nothing. Yeah, I think All or Nothing is a very good title for this particular side scenario. Not having played it, it seems like you're either going to walk out of the Clover Club with a bunch of XP and bonus resources for your next scenario in a campaign, or you're going to get out with nothing. And personally, I'm not much of a gambler, so I think I would, if depending on how this works when we play it, I may not ever play it again. It just may not be worth the effort, especially in multiplayer. It seems like generating enough resources to get the best result in 4-player is going to be exceedingly difficult. 60 resources per investigator. That is, what is that? 240 resources on the act. That I just don't see that happening very often, if at all. So I think, yes, all or Nothing is a very apt name. You're either going to walk out and collect your winnings and have that sweet bonus XP and those sweet additional resources, or you will simply be just happy to escape with your life. And you'll be 3 XP down. You'll just spend 3 XP for nothing, which, I don't know, 3 XP is quite a bit. If it was a little bit cheaper, I might consider it, but 3 XP, that gets you that gets you a couple level 0, level 1 cards. Is it halfway to an ace in the hole? Yeah, so we'll see. We are going to play this scenario and see how it works. So without further ado, I think we are set up and ready to go in Octagon here. Let me see. Yes, we are. So we are going to play this scenario and see how it works. We have our parallel skids here. Now, the deck I am using is based on a deck by Motux. It's a bit of an older deck from a few years ago. It's called Greaseman. It is a more evasion-oriented Skids build. It is a bit older, so it doesn't have a lot of the newer cards in it, but I did tweak it somewhat. I can't remember how many experience points I put into it. It's over 20, so we're going to have 3 weaknesses in our deck. But I am playing, the only cards I upgraded were Hot Streak, obviously, because we are playing a resource-based scenario. So I have 4 copies of Hot Streak, 2 of 2 and 2 of 4. And I also upgraded the copies of Lucky. So we have Lucky 0 and Lucky level 2. So we've got 4 copies of Lucky, 4 copies of Hot Streak. Some of the other notable cards in this deck, we've of course got lockpicks, so we can investigate. We've got backstab if we need to try to kill somebody. We've got double or nothing if we can pull off a big haul. If we get the right cards, we can generate a ton of resources with a double or nothing off Skids' ability. We've got Switchblade 2 if we need to kill something. Lone Wolf, of course, because we're playing solo. We've got all of the Hot Streaks Luckies. We've also got Cat Burglar, which I think is going to come in really handy in this particular scenario. Cat Burglar, of course, gives you that +1 agility, so Skids will be at a 5. And then you can exhaust the Cat Burglar to disengage from each enemy engaged with you and move to a connecting location. So this does not provoke attacks of opportunity. So this could be very important card in making our way through the Clover Club without dealing with too many enemies. And we've got a couple copies of Guts. I don't think we really need Guts in this scenario, but I threw it in there anyway. Just to shore up our willpower. And of course, finally, we've got Quick Thinking, which gives us access to an additional action if we can succeed by 2 or more. Hopefully, we can use that in combination with our lockpicks, but there are other. We've got some other cards in there as well that should be able to help us out. And of course, a pickpocketing, just because if we evade an enemy, we can draw a card. So there are, the deck size is 31 cards as it stands. We will need to draw 3 weaknesses before we start. Now, we start at La Bella Luna, which has Resign. This was a bust. There's 1 clue there, 2 shroud location. We've got the Clover Club Pit Boss here. He's the hunter, worth a victory point. If we gain clues while he's around, he will attack us, so we will obviously want to try to avoid doing that. We are playing... Now, this is an interesting thing, I thought, was that I believe the Parallel Daisy scenario didn't give you the option to play with the Return 2 cards. This one does, so we are playing the souped-up Return 2 version of this scenario. So we added the additional treacheries to the deck, and the other thing is that we have to remember that we cheated. So we have already cheated in this game, so that will have effect. That will affect us if we draw certain encounter cards. We also have to use the version of the Clover Club Lounge from the Return to the Dunwich Legacy expansion. So this is the new version of the lounge. We've got the card room and the bar, and of course the darkened hallway that is connected to the back hall doorways, where we can get some clues to gain even more resources. We've already discussed Agenda 1A, All Eyes Around You. It has a Doom threshold of 11. And if we can get to the card room, we can take an action to spend all our clues to gain resources. So that will be... We will want to try to do that at some point. I believe there are 4 clues. There's 1 here at Bella Luna, and then the 3 back hall doorway locations. So we can get 20 clues there, or sorry, not 20 clues, 20 resources if we can pull that off before we escape. So we'll try to do that. Act 1A is playing cards. So once we have 15 resources, we advance, and we will have to try to escape. So if we have 15 plus 20 puts us at 35. So maybe what we want to try to do here is position ourselves so we are at like 14 resources, then have a super hot streak turn where we gain a bunch. I'm not going to say how many, just a bunch, where we really ramp up our resource generation the one turn before we advance. So we're not at 15, we're at like 30 or 40. And then we go to the card room, we spend our clues to get an additional 20, and then we just try to get out. I think that is a good strategy to follow. I think if we advance as soon as we hit 15, we're going to be in trouble. We're just not going to have the time we need to do this. So we do have 11 turns. We can take a little bit of time to set up and get in the right position, and then just try to maybe hang on to those hot streaks and then just blow them all in one turn, gain a ton of resources, and then advance. We are playing All or Nothing on standard difficulty. The skulls, of which there are 2, are -1 for each clue that you have, so to a maximum of -4 in this scenario. I don't expect that to be too much of an issue, although the skulls potentially could be quite painful until we get to the card room in order to dump our clues, because there is no way for us to spend clues in this scenario. So for every clue we gain, the skulls are going to be worse. The cultist is -2, -4 instead if you have 10 or more resources. Yikes, that is going to be cultist is going to be bad. Almost immediately we're going to have a -4 in the bag. The tablet, of which there is 1, is a -2, and if you fail, lose 3 resources. That is obviously bad. We do not want to be losing resources in this scenario. We want to be gaining them. And finally, the elder thing, which is there is 1, is a -3, and if you fail, Skids takes 1 horror. So that's not great either, considering we only have 6 sanity. So the chaos bag is tilted pretty negative. The skulls are going to be up to -4. The cultist is a -4. The tablets are -2, and the elder thing is -3. So that's a lot of negative tokens in the bag. A lot of very aggressively negative tokens. I should have a drink here because I've been talking straight for an hour. So I think to pass skill tests reliably, we're going to need to be at -2 at least, and then at least 2 up, and probably 3 or 4 up toward the end of the game when the tokens are definitely going to be tilted against us. Finally, we've got Siobhan here and the Clover Club Bouncer. Let us draw our weaknesses. Now, knowing me, because I'm the man from Leng, I always draw indebted, overzealous, and what's my third most? Internal injury, probably. So those are the 3 I'm going to guess. I'm going to draw those 3 because I always seem to draw those 3. So let's see. Our first weakness, because we're playing with over 20 XP, we need 3. There we go. Indebted, of course. See? I know myself. So we're going to start the game with 2 less resources. That sucks. All right, but we knew we were going to draw that, so that's par for the course. Let's see, did we get an overzealous? No, we got hypochondria. So after we take a damage, we take a direct horror. That will get shuffled in. I tend not to play a lot of decks with a ton of experience points in them in standalone, just because I hate drawing additional weaknesses. But with this one, I sort of just let the reins go and threw a bunch of cards in that had to cost a ton of experience points. Third is... Oh! That is the new weakness from... Aticophobia. I believe that's the new weakness from the Stella Clark starter deck. After we fail a skill test, take 1 horror. Ouch. That is not good. So a new card there that we're going to play with. So this is interesting. We knew we were going to get Undeaded. That's just, I always draw that. But so we've got Hypochondria and Aticophobia, as both of which will, I think, hit us in the horror department. So let's draw our opening hand and see how we do. Oh, I see. There's a problem with Octagon. Why does Hospital Debts have the wrong... Yeah, so we're going to know when we draw our weakness, which is unfortunate. I am using both the advanced versions. Seemed like the thing to do. All right, let's draw. We get lockpicks. That's a keeper. We get Aticophobia, which we will discard. We get backstab. That's okay, I guess. We don't need unexpected courage. We're going to keep the hot streak and the lockpicks. We're not going to take the backstab unless we really are in need of killing something. So we're going to draw 3. We're keeping lockpicks and hot streak level 4. So we're going to need to... Oh, we have just enough to play hot streak level 4. Okay, so we're going to get... of course, we mulliganed an unexpected courage and we draw an unexpected courage. There is hot streak, our other copy of hot streak 4, and a quick thinking. So we've got 2 copies of hot streak 4, so we can go up 20 resources in a turn if necessary. All right. Let's gain our 3 actions and kick this thing off. I think what we do, we need to get this clue before the Clover Club Pit Boss comes in, because otherwise he is going to attack us. So we're going to spend 3 resources to play the lockpicks. It has 3 supplies. And then we are going to use the lockpicks to try to get... actually, we should do this in a different order. I think what we need to do... That's a tough question. Do we... The bag is not really... I don't think I can go -2 and succeed easily on that free triggered ability. So I think this turn I'm just going to go for the lockpicks and get this clue. So that was our first action, to play lockpicks. Second action, we will investigate. So we will exhaust the lockpicks. We will add our agility to our investigate. So we are at 7v2. I like those odds. Chaos Bag says skull. That is a -1. So we easily succeed by 2. So that's fine. And we will grab this clue. And we have 1 action remaining. Now I think what we want to do is pull the pit boss to us this turn. So I think I'm going to draw a card. And we get a copy of Lucky level 2. So during the enemy phase, the pit boss will move toward us. He is aloof though, so he will not attack us. He won't engage us yet. And we will go to upkeep. We draw another copy of Quick Thinking. So we've got a good way to stack a couple of actions if necessary. All right. That is the first turn out of the way. 1 doom of 11. our first encounter card. I'm going to give the deck a shuffle just because. And we will go for our first encounter card. Now we are playing with the return to Dunwich Legacy Treacheries, so those are a threat. Arousing Suspicion. Oh dear. Place 1 doom on each criminal enemy at your location. If no doom was placed by this effect, lose 2 resources. That sucks. So yes, that is basically arousing suspicions in this particular scenario is basically going to be a it is basically an Ancient Evils. Now, we could kill the pit boss, would remove the doom but then add the doom. So basically the doom is here to stay. So arousing suspicion, basically an Ancient Evils in this particular scenario now. All right, we gain our 3 actions. I think we want to get to the Darkened Hall as quickly as we can to get some more clues. So let's go. We'll move once to the Clover Club Lounge. It is a 4-shroud location. 4-shroud location, 0 close. After Clover Club Lounge is revealed, put the set-aside Clover Club stage into play. I believe the stage is over here. There is the stage. Now, where is the stage connected to? It is just connected to... It's connected to the bar and... Now, I don't think we want to go there. And we can also take an action to look at the top card of your deck. If it's an ally asset, put it into play. Otherwise, draw it. I don't really have any way of knowing what the top card of my deck is, so that seems like a wasted action. Let's go to the Clover Club card room. 3-shroud location with 0 clues. While it is Act 1, we can spend resources to gamble. Now, we cannot cheat on this one. Unlike the House Always Wins, I don't think we have a way of cheating here. So gambling, we could potentially gain more clues. So if we get an Elder Sign, we get 2 clues and 2 resources. If it's an even number, we gain 2 clues from the token pool, which we can immediately cash in for. We could cash in later for 5 resources apiece. Or we could go... Or we could get nothing. And we'd have to spend resources to do it, which seems risky to me. So we're going to move to the Darkened Hall. So forced after the Darkened Hallway is revealed, put the 3 set-aside back hallway doorway locations into play. So unlike the House Always Wins, we do not need to spawn an enemy here, as we would. So those are in play. Now we have our free triggered ability, which we should use. So we will spend a clue, or not a clue, a resource. And we will gamble. So we are going 3v1. Now, if we commit a quick thinking, we'd be 4v1, and the unexpected courage would be 5v1, or 4 would be 6v1. So we'd get two resources, and we'd get an additional action. Let's do that. So we are going quite a bit V1. We get a -1. So we do succeed by 2. Okay, so we gain 2 resources due to Skids' special ability. And we gain an additional action, which we will use to move to this back hall doorway. It is the art gallery. 2 shroud location, 1 clue. After you fail a skill test while investigating the art gallery, lose 2 resources. So that's not great, but we are just going to investigate there next turn with the lockpicks. At very good odds, I might add. So we should be able to gain a resource. So we're going to be at 3. We could go to 10 if we play Hot Streak, and then we could go, when we hit 14, we'd be at 24. Then we'd have 4 clues that we could spend, so we'd be at 44. Okay, 60 is possible. If we get the right hand, we can do it. Okay, so this guy is moving during the enemy phase. We get a switchblade too. That is not going to help. I probably should have thrown in like emergency cash and stuff too. Maybe that would have helped, but I've always wondered about these side scenarios, whether, like, I know you can build a deck that could basically just generate a freaking enormous amount of resources, but could that deck also perform well during a campaign? So I'm not. I think it's an interesting balancing act trying to determine. Okay, if I can build a deck to beat this, obviously in standalone mode, but can you build a deck that can beat a campaign and this scenario? So this is more like a typical campaign deck. So we'll see how it does in this particular situation. So Skids gains his 3 actions back during the upkeep phase. We go to Mythos. We've got 3 of 11. Man, this is going to be quick indeed. And our encounter card is False Lead. If you have no clues, False Lead gains Surge. If you have 1 or more clues, test Intellect 4. For each point you fail by, place 1 of your clues on your location. Well, this is not good. This is obviously a bad card for us. We do have a lucky, though. So we're going 3v4. We have no way of spending... I mean, you probably need Streetwise in this deck, too. That would be very... that would be good, too. But then again, you're just spending resources when you need resources. Man, I hate to waste that quick thinking. Is it the worst thing in the world if we drop a clue here? We don't really have a good way of getting it back. That's the problem. And if we fail a skill test, we're losing 2 resources. All right, let's commit this other quick thinking. So we're going 4v4. Hopefully the Chaos Bag will be kind to us. We get an Elder Sign. Okay. That is a succeed by 2 even. Oh, that was lucky as hell. So... we get +1, so we ended up at 6v4. So we succeed by 2, so we get the extra action off of quick thinking. Awesome. And what else do we get? We get choose a level 2 card or less card in your discard pile. Add that chosen card to your hand. So we get a card back. So we could take unexpected courage or quick thinking. I'm going to take the quick thinking back. So we get another quick thing. So we committed a quick thinking and we get a quick thinking back. We get an additional action right away. So we can... I think we'll investigate here. 7v2. Chaos Bag says Skull. That's a -1. So we grab this clue. All right. And we do not lose a lockpick. So all things considered, that went from being a particularly bad Mythos phase to a very good Mythos phase for us. Now we get our 3 actions. I think I'm going to spend... We'll use our free triggered ability. Free triggered ability to go 3v1. Oh, that's bad. Oh, no, it's okay. 3v1, -2, -4 if we have 10 or more resources. So we gain 2 resources. So we're at 4 now. So we are in hot streak territory. If we play hot streak now, we would be up to... we'd gain... We'd be at 11. So we will use our first action to move back to the Darkened Hall. We will use our second action to move to this location. It is the VIP area, 3 shroud location with 1 clue. We cannot draw cards or gain resources during the upkeep phase. Okay. So let's... do we want to turn on the cultists? I guess so. 2, 3. So we'll play Hot Streak. Level 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we are at 11 resources. We have 1 action remaining. So we moved. No, we don't. We have 0 actions remaining. So we don't get to draw a card this turn. Is there a way I can lock my deck? Lock the deck. And I will lock me too. So I do not gain resources or cards this turn. Enemy phase. This guy moves to the card room. Upkeep phase, we don't get anything. Mythos phase, okay. 4 of 11 Doom. Our encounter card is Hunted Down. If there are no unengaged criminal enemies in play, Hunted Down gains Surge. If there are 1 or more unengaged enemies in play, each of them moves 1 location toward you. Each criminal enemy that engages you as a result of this effect makes an immediate attack. So this guy moves here. The Clover Club Pit Boss moves to the Darkened Hall and hangs out. And that's it. That is all that happens. Okay, so... So what is our resource take look like right now? So we can play, we can gain 7 resources, so we would be at 18, plus another 20 from the clues we dump at the card room, which would put us at 38. All right. I'm hoping what we could do maybe is just escape. Like when I run out, basically just take a bunch of damage from enemies and resign that way without having to fight them. Okay, well, we're going to investigate here. We will exhaust the lockpicks. We will go 7v3. Do we want to take an additional action this turn? I think the back door is a pretty good spot too. So we'll just go. We'll save our quick thinking. We'll go 7v3. Chaos Bag gives us a -3, so that is. We go to 4v3. So we break a pick. That's okay. Not the worst thing. We've got that clue anyway. We will move back to the darkened hall. We will move down to the back hall doorway. It is a one shroud location with one clue. So I think next turn is a good time to play our quick thinking again. We'd be going 7v1, 8v1 with quick thinking. That gives us an additional action we can use to get to the Clover Club card room. We can dump all of our clues to gain 20 resources, play Hot Streak as well to gain another 7. So we're going to gain 27. Puts us at 38. 39. We need to use our ability. We'll go 3v1 again. That's a -3, so that is a failure. Unfortunately. So we that is our first failure. So we lose a resource, unfortunately. This guy is going to move in here. He's still aloof, though. So we don't have to worry about him. I didn't draw a card. I did gain a resource, though. We get on the lamb. Okay. That is interesting. We get the advanced on the lamb, which we could use to disengage from each enemy and move 2 locations, which would get us back to La Bella Luna. I don't know how we get 60 resources here. 38, 30 plus. So if we get 30, what do we end up with here? I'm just going to take a quick peek back at my sheet here. So if we end up 30 resources, we end up with 3 additional resources during the next scenario. We would get the 3 bonus XP, so we've covered the cost of the XP we spent to do it. So we'd get 3 bonus resources. Not terrible, I guess. No bonus XP until we get to 40, though. Can we get to 40 is the question. I guess we could try to be more aggressive with... we could commit on the lamb to one of these skill tests, one of Skids' special abilities, to try to go 6. If we got a double or nothing, we could even try to go higher than that. So then maybe that's the way. That would get us 12 in one shot. So maybe we can pull something like that off. We will get our 3 actions back, and then we will go to the next Mythos phase. So 5 of 11. Encounter card is going to be, Hunting Shadow. Peril, you must either choose 1, spend 1 clue, or take 2 damage. I just take the damage on this. I'm not spending my clues on... that. Okay. So we've got easily enough lockpicks to deal for the rest of the scenario. This is the last room we need to lockpick, so that's fine. So we can lockpick to get this clue. We can play a quick thinking on it to get an additional action. But what will we do with that additional action is the question. We could use On the Lam to gain 6 resources. That would put us at 6v3. 7v3 if we commit the quick thinking to it. Do I need the On the Lam? It's hard to say. I mean, I could just take actions and resign if I'm in danger. So let's do it this way. It's at the end of the round, right? We advance. So we will go. Now we're gonna get the bouncer. He's gonna be tough to evade. Siobhan and the bouncer will show up. So we go move, resign. Let's get our... Okay, first off, let's get... we'll lockpick this... lockpick the back alley. So we're going to go 7, 8 v1. We get a -1, so we easily succeed by 2 for the additional action. Now we've got the last clue. So we can move twice, back to the Darkened Hall, back to the Clover Cup card room. Now, we could, if we spend 2 resources and then commit On the Lam, we'd get 4. So we'd go up to 13. Or no, we want to go... Yeah, we'd be at 13. Or do we... I think we wait another turn. I think we wait one more turn to do this, because we can... next turn, we spend all our clues to get 20 resources. We play the hot streak to get more resources. We gamble aggressively. So we will be at 14 resources at the end of this turn. So we'll use our free triggered ability. We're going to commit on the lamb, so we're going to pay 2 resources and go 3v2, 3, 4, 5, 6v2, 6v2. We get a -2, so we succeed. So we gain 4 resources. Okay, so we're right at that 14. We're going to be right at that 14 resource threshold. We've got 1 card, 1 action left. If we spend 2 resources, we need an even number to gain 2 more clues. I don't think that favors us. I think I'm just going to draw a card. Okay, we get an unexpected courage. Okay, that's helpful because now we can be very aggressive with our free triggered ability next turn and try to really jack up our resources. Okay, enemy phase. The Clover Club pit boss moves here. We're gonna go to upkeep. We're at 14 resources and we get a lucky level 0. Okay, we'll get our 3 actions back. And we go to Mythos. There's 6 of 11. Encounter card is Curse Luck. Ah, shoot. That's annoying. Get -1 value during skill tests. Okay. We can deal with that. Now, I don't know if there are clues at the Clover Club stage. I honestly haven't played House Always Wins enough, Return to House Always Wins enough to know if there's a clue, if there's 5 resources sitting at the Clover Club stage for me. So what do we do here? We can 1 action to Hot Streak, 1 action to trigger the action on Eyes All Around, one action to move, so we'll move here. Okay, so where are we going to be in terms of clues? We're going to be 20 plus 7, so 27 plus 14 is 41. Plus, we can be super aggressive with our free triggered ability. I guess the thing I want to try, maybe what I need to do is investigate to clear the cursed luck. Play Hot Streak, use the action on the card room. Use our ability next turn. Yeah, okay. Let's do that. I guess the difference is because if these suckers attack us, he has no effect if he attacks us, so I don't care about him. He'll just hit us for 2 damage. Siobhan, however, we lose a resource for every 5 resources that we have. So she would, after she engages us, so we would need 46 resources. We'd need 46 resources to get around her. I'm just wondering whether it's better to be at the card room or the lounge when we set this off. Because if we're at the lounge, we'll be engaged with the bouncer. That means we'd only have to move 1 location. Yeah, I think I would prefer to be at the lounge than here. So what we will do, use an action, we will trigger the ability on Eyes All Around to cash in our chips. So we will spend 4 clues to gain 20 resources. Okay, then we will use Hot Streak to gain 7 resources. Or 10 resources, sorry. So we'll spend 3. So we're at 41. We will move, because if we get 40 resources, 40 resources gives us a bonus experience point and 4 additional resources during the next during the next scenario. So if we go all in on this one, do we have enough? We'd be going 2v3. We could commit Unexpected Courage to go 4v. Yeah, let's spend 2 resources. We'll commit the Unexpected Courage. So we are going 2v2, so 4v2 for 4 resources. We get an Elder Thing. That's a -3. However, we've got a Lucky. So we spend a resource and we get +2, so we go up. We were 4v2, we go down to 1v2, we go up to 3v2, so we succeed. We gain 4 resources. So we netted 1. And we succeeded by 1 or more. Right? We were at 4v2, we went down by 3 to 1, we went up to 3v2, so we succeeded by 1, so we get to discard the Cursed Luck. And we get to draw a card because that was Lucky 1. Or Lucky 2, sorry. We get a Backstab. Haven't seen Double or Nothing. That would have been really nice. Maybe we'll get one during the upkeep, but so 42, yeah, we're just going to be shy. Because when we engage Siobhan, she's going to take... We're going to lose 8 resources. Which is going to drop us to 30. Yeah, that, what's that card? The resign card. That would be really sweet in this one. That's almost, yeah. Because then you could just resign at any time and never have to face Siobhan. So if we were really aggressive, if we spent 3 to gain 6, we could just do it. We'd have 8. Or no, we'd need 9 then. Damn, Siobhan is mean. So during the enemy phase, this guy moves here. Okay. We gain... So we went up to 43 resources. We get a lone wolf. Unfortunately, that does sweet F all for us. However, it is an agility skill icon. If we dump all our agility skill icons into the test, we might be able to do it. Next turn. Okay. 1, 2, 3 actions. We go to the Mythos phase. 7 of 11. Card is going to be caught cheating. Yeah, see, this is... We couldn't do anything about this. Surge, each player who has cheated must lose 2 resources and take a damage. So we do cheat because we included this set. So we lose 2 resources. So that prevents us from that's probably going to prevent us from getting through Siobhan. Actually, and we advanced. So Siobhan and the bouncer. Siobhan shows up here, and the bouncer shows up with us. And that's that. So yeah, feeling the heat, fueled by luck and adrenaline, you've won a bit too much and failed to keep a low profile. The O'Banions know you're here and despise having their money stolen by cheaters. A commanding voice from Labella Luna calls out, "That O'Toole vermin is here, split up and get him." You freeze and your mind clears at the sound of your name. It may be time to stop. Once oblivious mobsters now rise and pursue you with fierce determination. Do you confront the trouble before escaping out the front door, or do you try to find the back door? Oh, you can resign at the back door too. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's an option too. I forgot about the backdoor option. Maybe we go the back door. We're sort of committed to the front door at this point. But yeah, the back door, I forgot the back door also has a resign. So we could have gone that way, but we would have been engaged with the pit boss. Could have evaded, moved, and resigned. Yeah, that's... We moved the wrong way. Or we could just backstab the pit boss. But we're engaged with this guy now. And he is +8. 8 fight and 8 evade. So he's a 939. Yeah, okay. So we could have if we were here. Let's just theorycraft here for a second. If I had remembered that the back alley had a resign action, I could have gone that way. So I could have gone to the card room, then gone to the darkened hallway. So I would be here with the with these two. And then I would have had to have... I could have taken 4 damage and resigned. Right. So yeah, that's what I should have done. I think. If I had, when I was here, I had 1 action remaining. I should have gone back to the darkened hall. I would have been engaged with these 2 enemies, but then I wouldn't lose resources to Siobhan. So I could have just gone move, resign, and I would have resigned with 41 resources. But the way I did it, I end up... I take less damage, but I also gain fewer resources. I'm a resource down because then when Siobhan engages me, I lose, for every 5 resources, I lose 1. So I lose 8 resources, which drops me down to 33. And I don't get anything for this scenario. Now, yeah, he's 8/8. That's ridiculous. So yeah, I would suggest in the future, like, this is, not having played this before, I've been playing pretty quickly. There's still quite a few turns left on the agenda, so I could have taken more time to set up. I could have drawn a bunch of cards and just sort of sat at 14 resources, and then when I was ready to go, I could have just dumped everything into it and then ran out the back door. So I'm probably not gonna finish this with a great resource total, but I know I definitely know for the future what I would need to do. So that, did we draw an encounter card? Yeah, we were caught cheating, and that has Surge. Yeah, so before I get carried away. So now enemies gain Hunter and +1 health, so killing Siobhan at 7 is not really... and this guy is a 4. 8, 4, 8. Ridiculous. So yeah, we have to draw another card. We get another thug. Oh. So we get an O'Banion thug. Oh, we cannot gain resources. Oh, that sucks. So we can't even trigger our ability unless we kill him, and the only way to kill him is to spend a bunch of resources. So would this have affected us if we had been at the darkened hall instead? Yes, actually that would have been worse, because then we would have no. We could have we wouldn't have been able to just move. We would have taken too much damage, but we can... Is it location? Engaged. Okay. So he is engaged with us, but we can evade him. Unfortunately, we can't gain enough resources to deal with Siobhan. We can gain 6. Or we can net 3, which puts us at 44. But then we're going to lose a bunch, and we're going to drop down to less than 40, which is sort of not where I wanted to be. We'd gain 3 additional resources during the next scenario, which I guess that's okay. I mean, it's not the best. Like, we get 3 VP, and a bunch of resources for the next scenario. So what we could do, doesn't really matter, actually. We can just move. We're going to engage her. We'll lose 8 resources and then resign. So we would take 4 damage. We would move back to La Bella Luna. We'd take the 4 damage from these 2 guys. And then we would lose 8 resources, which drops us to 33. And then we resign. Now we could have also evaded this O'Banion thug. We could have tried to evade him, then move and use our free triggered ability. So that would have been one option. Our other option is to do this instead. So she would be here, just playing out all the options here while we have the time. So we'd try to evade this guy, 4v2. 4v2. Okay, we get an Elder Sign. So he would be evaded. Does that give us enough resources, though? Can we get enough resources out of the deal? Because we still need to move and evade, so we can't play any more actions. We get a card. See, we could take a hot streak. But again, that only gets us to 40. Actually, I need to add some resources here. So we were at 41. If we were to take the hot streak, we couldn't play it. We could try to be aggressive. Spend 3. And then throw everything at it. So we would be 6v3. And then we draw an auto fail. Okay, so that would have been... Yeah, so we attempt our ability, we draw an auto fail, we move, and we only take 2 damage instead of 4, and then resign. And we sort of end up in the same position. We lose 7 resources. So we end up at the... So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the end. All right, well, that was an interesting scenario. I think, based on this rather quick and dirty playthrough, that 40 is definitely possible. Like, there's still 6, 7... There's still 4 turns. There were still 4 turns on the agenda deck when I quit. There's a double or nothing. That's what I needed. So double or nothing was the next card in my deck. I would have drawn Hospital Debts soon. Yeah, Hospital Debts really kind of screws you in this scenario. Yeah, it's tough to know, because if it, like, I had 4 turns where I could have drawn cards to set up for the end. I had 2 hot streaks in my deck, which would have given me a ton of resources. I had double or nothings, which I could have used for resources. But then the chances of me drawing hospital debts would have gone up, which would have cost me 10 resources. So I think it's hard to predict how many resources you're going to end up with in this scenario. Just depending on the cards you draw. Like if I draw on Lone Wolf a little bit earlier, I get a resource every turn, right? There's another, if you draw it first turn, then you get, you can get up to, what turn is it? 7. I would have gotten like 6 more resources with Lone Wolf. So I think 60 is definitely possible, but you would need you need things to go pretty smoothly. Like you would need to hit all your hot streaks without drawing your hospital debts, get some double or nothings, get some big resource generation off of Skids' special ability, and then you would be able to do it. And basically using all of the agenda. I was a little quick here. I had four turns. I could have drawn some cards. I could have repositioned myself for the final push. I think you want to be like at the Darkened Hall or the Clover Club Lounge, depending on what your resource count is, so you can just basically move and resign the turn you trigger. I think the turn you advance, you basically want to resign the next turn, unless you're planning on fighting, but you've got a Clover Club pit boss who's going to have a ridiculous number of fight and evade. So yeah, I think that's a viable strategy. Hang out at the Darkened Hall or the Clover Club Lounge. Trigger everything so you can advance, gain a ton of resources, and then basically try to resign the next turn. I think if you were at 60, that would be a lot harder to do. If you were aiming for 60, that would be harder to do. You'd need sort of extra actions from quick thinking to be able to play the extra hot streaks and whatnot. But it's possible. So that is the parallel Skids O'Toole and his new side scenario, All or Nothing. In the end, we ended up with 3 VPs. And I believe we ended up with an extra, because we had 30 or more resources per investigator. We end up starting next scenario with 3 additional resources. I guess having drawn indebted, that kind of, basically breaks even. I don't really get anything out of that, but hitting 60, I think you could do it, but you would need to have a very good game in order for everything to sort of line up properly. Overall, I think that this version of Skids is going to prove, probably, I'd be willing to bet he'll be even more popular than the original version. I think his ability to generate resources plays into a lot of what rogues are doing right now. The rogue card pool has really shifted to focus on resource generation versus action advantage. So the parallel Skids plays very nicely with that. There's a lot of interesting cards in the parallel card pool that you could experiment with building a lot of different decks with. I think if you're playing a solo campaign, taking on All or Nothing is probably worth your time, just for if you can get out. I don't think it's that hard to regain the 3 bonus experience points. The 3 experience points you paid for it, but you're only going to get additional action. It's going to be harder to get those to make up bonus experience points out of it. You're going to mostly get resources. So I guess it depends whether you really, if you were going into, say, the final scenario of a campaign, I'd definitely play this. Before that, starting the final scenario of a campaign with 3 to 6 additional resources would be pretty awesome. Otherwise, yeah, it would be good toward the end, like the final second last scenario of a campaign for sure. But overall, I think the new Skids is pretty cool. I think I'll play around with, probably end up playing around with him more if I've got the time. There's just so many investigators to deal with right now. We've got the 5 coming out in the starter decks, as well as the 5 more, or wow, we already know Silas and Dexter, so 3 more coming out in the Innsmouth Conspiracy in a couple months. So there's a lot of investigators to play. So I don't know how often I'm going to get to play new Skids, but I think he's definitely leaning into what the rogue card pool is doing, more resource heavy versus action advantage type builds. And I hope that you will check him out and see how he does for you. So that is going to do it for this episode. I will be back soon with some more playthroughs, reviews. I'm working on a few more videos for other investigators that will be released when I have the time. But until then, I hope that you will stay tuned. How long did we end up playing this thing? 2.5 hours. Wow. All right. So check out the other stuff. I hope that you enjoyed this video, perhaps picked up a few tips and tricks for playing the new Skids, and stay tuned for more from Manfromleng and the Whisper in Darkness. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to leave a comment. If you'd like to become a patron of the channel, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.